The galaxy had written them off. Abandoned on a dying world at the edge of known space, the last survivors of humanity huddled behind crumbling walls, waiting for the end. The enemy fleet filled the sky endless, unstoppable. Their message had been clear: no one is coming for you. No allies, no reinforcements. Just surrender or die. But humanity had one law burned into their bones: never go down alone. The first enemy dropships hit the ground, their war machines rolling out like shadows of death. The defenders, starving, outgunned, and outnumbered, raised their rifles anyway. If this was the end, they'd make it cost. Then, just as the enemy charged, the sky ripped open. At first, it was just a flicker, a distortion in the blackness above. Then, the void itself seemed to scream as something monstrous tore its way into reality. Ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen emerged, their hulls scarred from battles fought in nightmares. The transmissions crackled to life, and a single voice cut through the static. "Did you really think we'd leave our people to die?" The enemy froze. They knew that voice. Every species in the galaxy did. Because humanity hadn't just survived the wars of the past, they'd won them. And the legends of their fury had been passed down like warnings. The enemy commander shouted orders to retreat, but it was too late. The deadliest fleet in history had just arrived, and they weren't here to negotiate. On the ground, the defenders watched in stunned silence as the sky turned to fire. The enemy's proud warships burned like paper in a storm, their formations shattered in seconds. But as the dust settled, a new terror emerged. Something was wrong. The fleet wasn't just here to save them. They were here for something else, something buried deep beneath the planet's surface. And whatever it was, the enemy had been willing to burn an entire world to keep it hidden. As the last of the enemy forces crumbled, the leader of the human fleet turned to the survivors, their face unreadable. "You don't know what you've been sitting on," they said. "And if we don't move fast, none of us are getting out alive." The ground beneath them trembled. Something was waking up. And it was hungry. The survivors stood frozen, their relief at being saved now twisting into something darker. The ground shook again, deeper this time, like the planet itself was groaning in pain. The leader of the fleet, clad in battle-worn armor, stepped forward. Their face was hidden behind a helmet. "We don't have much time," they said. "You've been living on a tomb, and the dead don't like being disturbed." One of the defenders, a grizzled soldier with a scar running down their cheek, spat blood onto the dust. "We've been digging for scraps just to survive. If there was something important here, we'd have found it." The fleet leader didn't answer. Instead, they turned and signaled to their troops. In seconds, a swarm of engineers descended, setting up strange devices that hummed with an eerie, pulsing light. The machines burrowed into the earth, scanning, searching. Then a sharp, echoing ping. The lead engineer looked up, face pale. "It's here. And it's active." The defenders exchanged glances. They'd fought for years on this rock, never knowing what lurked beneath their feet. But the fleet knew. And from the way their soldiers tightened their grips on their weapons, it wasn't good. The fleet leader finally removed their helmet. "This planet wasn't just a random target," they said. "It's a lock. And the key. Well, let's just say the enemy wasn't trying to kill you. They were trying to keep you quiet." Before anyone could respond, the earth split. A jagged crack raced through the ruins, swallowing whole buildings in seconds. From the darkness below came a sound not machinery, not rock breaking. Something breathing. The fleet's soldiers snapped into formation, weapons trained on the abyss. The defenders, still clutching their battered rifles, backed away. One whispered, "What the hell did you people bury down there?" The fleet leader's jaw tightened. "Not us," they said. "The ones who came before. The ones who lost." Then, from the depths, a shape moved. Massive, ancient, and very, very awake. The last transmission from orbit crackled through the comms, panic breaking up. "We've got incoming." Another fleet just warped in. There the signal died. Above them, the sky burned a second time. But this wasn't a rescue. It was a reckoning. The ground heaved as the thing beneath the planet stirred, its presence sending tremors through the ruins like the heartbeat of some monstrous god. The defenders stumbled back, their weapons suddenly feeling useless in their hands. The fleet leader barked orders, their voice cutting through the chaos. Fall back to the rally point now. But even as they spoke, the sky above twisted with new arrival ships, unlike anything the enemy had brought before. Sleek, silent, and glowing with an unnatural light, they moved like predators circling wounded prey. One of the defenders, a young mechanic who'd spent years keeping old generators running, grabbed the fleet leader's arm. "Who the hell are they?" The leader's face darkened. "The ones who built the lock." A deafening roar erupted from the fissure, shaking dust from the ruins. Something massive shifted in the darkness below, a glint of metal, the flicker of something alive but not organic. The fleet's engineers scrambled to decipher their scans, their screens flashing warnings in languages no one recognized. "It's not just buried down there," one muttered. "It's waiting." Above, the strange new ships began descending, their hulls humming with energy that made the air taste like ozone. The fleet's soldiers tightened ranks, but their commander held up a hand. "Don't fire," they ordered. "Not yet." The mechanic swallowed hard. "Why?" "They're not here to help us." "No," the leader said, watching the sky. "They're here to make sure nothing gets out." Then silence. The tremors stopped. The ships above hung motionless. Even the wind died, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. From the fissure, a voice echoed. Not through the air. Not through comms. It spoke inside their minds, a whisper like rusted metal grinding together. "You should not have come back." The mechanic's hands shook. The fleet leader's grip on their weapon turned white-knuckled. And in the sky, the unknown ships began to glow brighter, powering up for something worse than war. Something final. The whisper in their minds became a scream, 1,000 voices shrieking in unison, ancient and furious. The mechanic dropped to their knees, hands clamped over their ears, but the sound wasn't coming from outside. It was inside, tearing through memories, peeling back thoughts like layers of skin. The fleet leader staggered, their weapon clattering to the ground as their vision swam with images that didn't belong to them, wars fought before humans had even crawled from the mud of Earth, machines that devoured stars, and something worse. Something buried so deep even time had forgotten it. Above them, the unknown ships locked onto the fissure, their glow intensifying to a blinding white. The air crackled with energy, raising the hairs on the defenders' arms. One of the fleet's engineers gasped, staring at their scanner. "They're not just powering weapons, they're charging a containment field." The mechanic forced themselves up, teeth gritted. Containment for what? Before anyone could answer, the ground exploded. A massive shape erupted from the fissure, a tangle of blackened metal and writhing tendrils, pulsing with sickly green light. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't alive. It was something in between, a nightmare given form. The thing stretched, its limbs unfolding like broken wings, and the moment it touched the air, the unknown ships opened fire. Beams of searing energy lanced down, striking the creature, but instead of burning, the energy sank into it, absorbed like water into sand. The thing grew, its form shifting, adapting. The fleet leader grabbed the mechanic's shoulder, dragging them back. "That's not a weapon they buried here," they hissed. "It's a prisoner." The unknown ships fired again, but this time, the creature fought back. A whip-like tendril lashed upward, spearing straight through one of the ships. The vessel didn't explode, it rotted, crumbling to dust in midair. Panic ripped through the defenders. This wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. The fleet leader turned to their soldiers, voice raw. "Fall back to the ships." "Now." The mechanic didn't move. "And then what? You're just gonna leave?" The leader's eyes flicked to the sky where the rest of the unknown fleet was descending, their weapons charging for a final desperate strike. "No," they said softly. "We're gonna do what humanity always does." They raised their comm. "Bring the Oblivion Core online." Silence. Then, from orbit, a single word in response, confirmed. The mechanics' blood ran cold. They'd heard stories about the core. A weapon so terrible, even the fleet only spoke of it in whispers. "You'll destroy the whole planet." The leader didn't look at them. Their gaze was locked on the creature, now towering over the ruins, its form twisting into something even more monstrous. Better one planet than every world it touches next. Somewhere in the chaos, the creature laughed, and the sky turned to fire. The fire in the sky didn't come from the Oblivion Core. Before the fleet's superweapon could activate, the unknown ships intercepted the signal, jamming it with a pulse of distorted energy that sent the entire human fleet systems into chaos. Screens flickered, engines sputtered, and for one terrifying moment, even gravity seemed to waver. The mechanics stumbled as the ground beneath them tilted, their stomach lurching. What the hell was that? The fleet leader's face went pale. They whispered. They knew we'd try this. Above them, the creature now fully free of its prison stretched toward the sky, tendrils latching onto the unknown ships, like vines climbing a wall. But instead of destroying them, it merged with them, metal twisting and reshaping into something new. Something worse. Then, a voice. Not in their heads this time. From everywhere at once. "You do not remember us." The words weren't spoken, they were implanted, flooding every mind on the battlefield with visions of a war so old Earth had still been molten rock. Armies of machines, locked in endless battle. A weapon that could unmake reality itself. And then silence. A forced peace. A trap. The mechanic gasped, clutching their head. That thing. It wasn't locked here. It was left here. Like a bomb. The fleet leader's hands shook as they reactivated their weapon. And we just woke it up. Before they could fire, the creature moved. Not toward them. Not toward the ships. It turned its gaze to the stars. And screamed. The sound wasn't just noise. It was a signal, rippling through space faster than light. A beacon calling out to something distant. Something hungry. The unknown ships, now half consumed by the creature, suddenly broke formation. Not to attack. Not to flee. To open a door. A rift tore open in the fabric of space, swirling with colors that hurt to look at. And from the other side, shapes. Moving closer. The mechanic's breath caught. Oh God, it wasn't alone. The fleet leader's comm crackled to life, the voice on the other side barely coherent through the static. "Commander, we're detecting multiple signatures incoming." Hundreds. No, thousands. The transmission cut off. The creature's laughter echoed across the dead world. And the first of the others began to step through. The rift pulsed like a wound in the universe, disgorging nightmares. More creatures poured through twisted amalgamations of metal and flesh, each more grotesque than the last. The fleet leader grabbed the mechanic's arm, dragging them toward the last functional dropship. "We have to go now." But the mechanic pulled free, eyes locked on the horror unfolding above them. "There's nowhere to run. Look at them, they're not attacking. They're waiting." The mechanic was right. The creatures hovered in eerie silence, forming a perfect ring around the rift. Then, from the depths of that swirling void, something enormous began to emerge. A shape so vast it blotted out the stars. The fleet leader's comm crackled again, a broken, desperate voice. "Oblivion Core is back online. 30 seconds to firing." The mechanic whirled toward them. "You'll kill us all." "Better than letting that loose on the galaxy," the leader snapped, inputting the final command. The countdown began. 20 seconds. The unknown ships, now fully absorbed by the creatures, suddenly reacted, surging toward the human fleet. 15 seconds. The mechanic's hands flew over a nearby console, frantically rerouting power. "I can give us one shot, a concentrated blast right into the rift. Maybe we can destabilize it." 10 seconds. The massive entity in the rift stirred, a single glowing eye the size of a moon fixing on the planet below. 5 seconds. The fleet leader made the call. "Do it." The mechanics slammed their fist down on the console. The Oblivion core fired, but not at the planet. A beam of pure annihilation lanced upward, striking the rift dead center. The creatures screamed as reality itself twisted, the portal collapsing inward like a dying star. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. Then light. A shockwave of energy erupted from the collapsing rift, vaporizing the creatures in an instant. The human fleet was thrown backward, ships spinning out of control as the shockwave rippled through space. The mechanic gasped as their dropship systems rebooted, revealing a sky full of wreckage but no rift. No creatures. Just silence. Did we win? The fleet leader didn't answer. Their eyes were locked on the view screen, where the last embers of the rift flickered out. And then movement. A single, scorched figure floated amid the debris. Humanoid, broken, alive. It raised its head and smiled. The mechanic's blood turned to ice. Oh no. The fleet leader reached for their weapon, voice barely a whisper. It was never about escaping. It was about sending a message. And somewhere, in the dark between the stars, something answered. The scorched figure hung in the void, its smile cutting through the silence like a knife. The mechanic's hands trembled on the controls, their breath coming in short, panicked bursts. What is that thing? The fleet leader didn't answer right away. Their grip on their weapon tightened until their knuckles turned white. A messenger, they finally said, voice hollow. And we just told the whole damn universe where we are. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. It just watched, as if memorizing every detail of the battered humans before it. Then, in a flash of distorted light, it was gone. Silence settled over the ruined planet. The enemy fleet was dust. The rift was sealed. But the victory felt empty. The mechanics slumped into their seat, exhaustion hitting them like a tidal wave. So, what now? The fleet leader let out a slow breath and activated the comm. All ships, regroup and prepare for immediate jump. We're going home. Home? The mechanic echoed, disbelief coloring their voice. After that? The leader turned to them, eyes weary but burning with something fiercer than defiance. Exactly because of that. Whatever's out there now knows we're still here. Still fighting. They looked back at the stars, their voice dropping to a whisper. And we're going to make sure the next time they come, we're ready. The mechanic wanted to argue, wanted to scream that they were just scraps of a dying species clinging to the edges of the galaxy. But then they looked around at the survivors picking themselves up from the rubble, at the human ship still standing despite everything. Maybe they weren't much, but they were enough. As the fleet's engines roared to life, the mechanic flicked one last glance at the empty space where the rift had been. A shiver ran down their spine. This wasn't over. But for the first time in a long time, they weren't running. The stars blurred as the ships jumped to light speed, leaving the dead world behind. Somewhere out there, something ancient and hungry had just woken up, and humanity would be waiting,